Pilgrims, welcome back to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today we are continuing with our Ultimate Battle Royale series. So, let's go ahead and jump straight into it, talk about where we left off, and where we're going, okay? So, if we looked at the last episode, and I go to our scenes file here, let's go to our scenes, into pun, and let's go straight to, well, I'll do the player login just to be sure. But I'll let this run and we'll talk about where we're at. So last time we did all this checking and we made sure that we are logging into the server, we're loading into the scene, and we added some code to our play button so that now when this loads up and we're in our player lobby, and then I click the play button, it's going to bring us into the game scene. So if I do that right here, I click play, there we go. It doesn't look like anything's happened except you see how here it says display 1, no cameras rendering. That means it can't find a camera. So the last thing we see is the last frame that was rendered. That was the last frame from our lobby. But if you look over here, we're actually in the game scene. So the game scene has been loaded, and that's this over here. You'll notice that all it really is a directional light and the floor. That's it. It's just a place to be for the moment. Now, under our Don't Destroy Unload, we do have our Photon stuff. We have our Launch Manager. And if you remember, we created our matchmaking. So all of that is working. We are officially connected and we are in the game scene. However, there's nothing there yet. Our character's not there yet. So our camera's not there yet, which is why we're seeing this and not what we should be seeing. Like you saw in the beginning of the previous episode, I believe, where I talked about here's where we're going. We're going to break it down. Okay, so how do we fix that? Well, obviously, we need to get our character in here somehow, right? So we have a little bit of tweaking we need to do some of our code. So let's go to our Launch Manager. And let's double click right here where it says Launch Manager Script, the actual word script right here. You can actually double click this and it will open the script file. There we go. So the script file has opened and here is the script as we left it off last time. So it should be 110 lines long. So what we're going to do here is we need to add some code here and we're going to add some stuff to the top. So let's go to the top and start there. So right up here with our variables, we have the instance static variable we created. We have the string for the username for our character, right? We have this boolean when I'm going to clear the preferences. So we're going to add something here. So we're going to add a public game object. And we're going to call this player prefab. So we're going to come back to that. But essentially, once we're all done with maybe this episode, maybe next episode, we're going to fill in this slot a prefab that is the character with all the stuff that they need to be able to play in the game scene, okay? So, with that being done, let's go down to the bottom, down here. We're going to go into our pun callbacks. Let's see, public methods, here we go, pun callbacks region. And at the very bottom, after on disconnected, we need to add some more stuff here. Now, to save a little bit of time, I'm going to do the copy paste thing again, but I'm going to explain everything as we go, like usual, so don't worry. So here we go. First function we're going to create is going to be a public override function, or method, pardon me. Learning to use the correct terms. This method is a public override of the onJoined lobby. So just like this, capital O, capital J, capital L, onJoined lobby. What this means is this function is going to get called, this method, is going to get called when we join the lobby. And what are we going to do? For right now, we're just going to pass a debug log. We're going to reach into the Photon network, get our character's nickname, and add to that string a space, right there, space, has joined the lobby with this number of players, and Photon network count of rooms created. So what this is going to equate to is player name has joined the lobby with number of players and this many rooms. So just some information that, hey, they've joined the lobby, and here's what they're called, here's the number of players that are there, and here's the number of rooms, okay? All right, we're going to add another function here. Let's go ahead and copy paste that. This makes it so much easier because I don't have to spend time typing. I can just spend time explaining to you guys. So here's the function. Another public override void on joined room. Now, capital O, capital J, capital R. That is important, so I want to point that out. So what are we doing here? This is when we actually join our room. So if you remember from our example way back, if you go back in the videos, you'll see the lobby is like the lobby of a movie theater, right? But we're not in a room yet. We're not in an individual theater numbered room yet, right? So this is when we actually join our rooms. When we go from the lobby into the room, what happens? First, we're going to do a debug log. We have joined the current room's name. So whatever that room is called, room 1, room lobby, room hangout zone, whatever you want to call the name of that room, with the number of players, and then the word players. So this will say, we have joined, hangout room with, say, 2 players. This is an example of what this will equate to. Then we're going to say, hey, Photon Network, I want you to automatically sync the scene, set that to true. So we're passing in a parameter, and passing a value to a parameter, rather, to say the automatically sync scene parameter, I want that to be true. So Photon will handle syncing everything up, getting everything all in line with each other for us. Perfect. Now, we're going to generate a random point to spawn. And you'll notice very, very carefully here, this int random point is going to be a random range between -10 and 10. So it's going to give you a number between -10 and 10. So it could be 5, -2, 8, 6, 10, -10. Any of those are valid numbers that will be stored in this variable of random point. Then we're going to spawn the player into the game scene. So we're going to say Photon Network instantiate the player prefab up above that we're going to come back to, .name. We're going to say, hey, a new vector 3 of pass in our random point, 0f, so it puts it on the floor. They're not floating in the sky. And then random point again. So whatever value this is, if we get a value of 5, it's going to be 505, okay? Just to make it a little bit more succinct here, you could do this twice if you really wanted to have each of the x and z values be different random numbers. It's not really that important, but you could. And then the quaternion.identity is saying get basically the base rotation that this object is and just use that. We don't care about the rotation right now, just put it in the scene, okay? So that's what this function is going to do. So as soon as we join a room, that's actually when it's going to spawn our player, okay? So that's an important distinction to make here. This is what is actually spawning the prefab that is the character with their controller, with their camera controller, all that stuff. That happens when this method is called. Okay, next one up. Let's grab one more, or 2 more, I think, here. Let's see, right there. So this method, I don't want that. I want this. There we go. Is another override. Public override void on join room failed. On join random failed, excuse me. So this has two bits here we need to look at. A short of a return code, so don't worry about that. It's essentially a number, return code. If you've ever gone to a website and the website is down, it might say 404. That's a return code. That's saying there's a list of errors that are possible, and they just assign a number to them. So this is one of the return codes that could be passed back to say, why did we fail to join a random, right? And then the string of a message. So the message is a string like, player's internet disconnected, player was kicked for cheating, or whatever the message, the reason is, it'll be passed in this variable called message. So if a room fails to be made, this will be called from the matchmaking script, okay? So matchmaking instance, create room on click, and then give our message here as to why the fail happened, but we're going to go ahead and create a room, okay? So it's kind of like a fallback, like a backup, if you will, right? Say you brought your lunch to school and somebody stole it, or it got destroyed or fell off the bus or something, right? You have a backup. You have another sandwich. So this is a backup in case that happens. Cool. Now, let's go to the next one here. And this is pretty cool here. I like this. So this is our on-created room. I keep clicking that. Sorry, I'm trying to just get rid of the spaces in between these. So public override void on-created room. So when the room is created, which this is going to call our function to create a room, right? When the room is created, we're going to say, hey, a message of a new room was created. And I'm going to say created, and we're going to tell it the name of the room that we created. We'll go over that in a moment. And it says this will be called after clicking the button. And we're going to call the same function here. You notice that it gets called in 2 spots because most of the time, 90% of the time, we're going to be calling just this function. Remember, this is our fall through. This is our, in case it doesn't happen for whatever reason, we still need to do that because we need a room for the players to exist in, okay? All right, just 2 more. Let me grab this and bring this over. All right, and let me shorten that up. There you go. Public override void, again, on player entered room. So this is creating the room, but this is what happens once the player actually enters the room, okay? So we're going to get a handle to the player. We're going to call it new player, so the player that is joining the room. So the base means go back to the base function that this is overriding and say get its method called onPlayerEnteredRoom, and we're going to pass it the player that just entered the room. We're going to say, hey, you need to know about this player. Here's this player. And then we're just going to put another message to say this player has entered this room. Okay? This means that our player is now officially in that room. All right, and lastly, what happens when we leave the room? Say we're done playing or we disconnect or whatever reason, right? So public override void on left room. Now this is left as in you have left the building, not left versus right, okay? So on left room, player has left the current match and returned back to the loading screen. So if you leave the match, you're going to go back to the loading screen, which will then fall through to the lobby, right? So that is our Photon Network load level 1. And remember, our scenes are in a specific order in our build structure so that it's 0 index, 0th, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. So that second one is our loading screen, which is technically our 1th indexed. So that's what the level that we want to load is, that level. Okay? All right. So that is all we need in here to make changes to our launch manager script. So I'm going to go ahead and save those changes, and let's return to the scene. Let it update. And we're just going to double check and make sure. Here we go. All done. Take a look at our console. We have no build errors. We have a couple of things here, but that's okay. Never assigned to. That's all right. We're working on stuff. But there's no build errors, which is the important part. All right. So now, our next step is we need to add some stuff to our player and get them set up and ready to be recognized in the game world. Because right now, they're not going to have what they need. So let's go to them. Let's take a look. And I'll show you. We'll make a prefab and we'll kind of let it fail. And I'll show you what happens. So let's go to our scenes folder again, and we go to player setup. This is just for me for the videos here to show you guys like, okay, here's our character. All right, so our UBR player character, here we go. Now he's cheating here because I do have this stuff here because I was testing it. So we're just going to remove this stuff really quickly. So this is how you guys will see him. Spoiler alert for those pieces right there. So this is how you guys will see him, right? And if I just hit play, just again to make sure everything is working before we take it to the next step. Here we go. I can aim around. I can move around. I can fall off of this thing like you guys pointed out with the gravity thing. So all this is working fine. We can move around. I can look with my gun. Okay, great. He's all set. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create him into a prefab. And we're actually going to put him in the resources folder. So you see how this says player? So this is the old one from our last setup. And you can see here he's got just a couple of things. So this is our old one. We're not going to worry about him right now. We're just going to take UBR player here, click and drag, and under the assets resources folder, just drop them right there. And when you drop stuff from the hierarchy into a folder in the project structure, it creates it as a prefab. So now you can see here, open prefab. We can see what he looks like here, and it will show you all the little bits and bobs about him right here. Cool. So he's ready to go. So now let's go ahead and save this scene. We'll come back to this, and we can now delete him from the scene because he's in our resources folder as a prefab. We can just drag and drop him, put him in any scene we want. Let's go back to our scenes, and I'll show you the problem, and then we'll talk about how to solve the problem. So we'll go to the login screen, and we go to our launch manager. You'll see here that it says player prefab. It's currently missing. We haven't put anything in there yet, and it needs something in there. Okay, no problem. So I'm going to go ahead up here on the right. I'm going to click the little lock icon, so that I don't lose focus from this inspector tab, because I want to be able to see this, because it's going to go away if I don't do that. When I do this here, I'm going to navigate back to my resources folder. I'm going to click and drag our UBR player and drop them right there. Okay? Cool. That should work, right? I'm going to hit save, and let's go ahead and hit play and see what happens. So it's going to go to the loading screen here because it already recognizes my credentials from before. That's all good. You can see the launch manager is coming with us, and I'm going to uncheck this again. And now if I click on this, we'll see, okay, cool, he knows about my UBR player. Awesome. Here we are. Okay, I'm ready to play. Let's go ahead and play the game. Well, what happened? I'm getting the same thing as before, even though I put the player in there, right? So why didn't it load the player? Let's take a look at our console. We have 2 errors here. Say wait for callback. It says, can only instantiate objects with a photon view component. What does that mean? So what that means is, the way that networking kind of works, and this is an oversimplified example for you experts listening. So you have 2 sides. You have the server, and then you have what's called a client. So every video game you play online, what you play on is the client. It's a copy of the game that you log into that is your local stuff. That's fine and dandy, but in order for the server to know about your changes that you're making to your character, which means what skins you're putting on, what weapon you're using, how you're moving in the world, you need to send information to the server, and then what it does is it kind of mirrors all that information to copies of you that are shown to everyone else. So that way it looks like you two are playing together. You're not really in some instances, but it's making a copy of that and it's translating that information to the other person's client so that they see you running around like you should, right? So what this is saying is, hey, I can't do this. I can't do this because I can't spawn something because I don't know about it. I don't know about it in kind of like server speak. So we have to add this photon view component to our character in order for it to be able to understand what's there. Okay, so there's a problem. We need to fix the problem. Cool. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we're going to do that. So let's go to our prefab, and I'm going to double click it here, and you'll see it opens up in this really cool section here where we have like an independent view, and so this is kind of like looking at the character in sort of the build space. So let's collapse all this stuff up, and we want to look at just the top level character. We have all of our stuff on here, right? We've got the transform, which is their position, the animator, their eye and voice thing we'll get to later, the player controller, character controller, camera controller, IK controller. We've gone over all that stuff. All that works, but we don't have the stuff that is needed for Photon to know how to translate this to itself, to the network, right? So that's what we're going to add now. So you need to add a couple of things. First, we're going to click Add Component, and we're going to search for Photon. We're going to spell it correctly. Photon View, right there. So let's open that up and take a look. What does that mean? So Photon View says, this object that this script is on now is something I want Photon as the networking solution to have a view into. I want it to be able to see what's going on with this object. Well, that's really cool. Okay, so how do we set this up? We're going to leave this at fixed. We're going to leave this at unreliable. We are going to change this guy to manual, okay? And when we do that, you'll see these observed components has kind of come to life. It's like, okay, you want me to look at stuff. What do you want me to look at? Well, we want to put 3 things in there for now. And we're going to come back to that a little bit because we need to add the other stuff first. But I'm just going to leave 3 things there. So we know that we need to put 3 things in there. Okay, next up, this will allow us to look at the object and know that it's there, but not much else. Okay, so let's go ahead and add another one. So I'm going to say Photon. And you see there's a bunch of stuff we can put on here, right? So let's go ahead and put Photon Animator View. So we want to be able to view the animations to this character so that when I do the crouch animation, a jump animation, or whatever, it needs to be able to know about that and see that. It needs to be able to view that from a Photon perspective to be able to show it to you and everyone else we play with, right? So the settings for this, we're going to say layer 0. We want you to be continuous. And the same thing for these 2 inputs. You notice that it automatically kind of figured out based upon the animator that is on the same root object that we have an input X and Y for our movements, right? So we're going to put both of those to continuous as well. There we go. Now, the animator is one of the things we're going to put in here, but we'll come back to that in a second, okay? So I'm just going to close that up for now. So the next thing we need is a way to also be able to view from a Photon perspective our movement, right? We want our animations, but we want our physical movement through the world as well. Because when I'm moving around and I say, hey, follow me, and I start running through the level, I need Photon to be able to show you where my character is moving so you know where to follow me, right? So let's go ahead and add another one, Photon. And you'll notice that when we look at Transform, there's Transform View and Transform View Classic. Now, I'll tell you, I've done a bunch of testing, and for me, the Photon Transform View just doesn't cut it, so I'm going to revert to the Classic. The Classic is a little bit deprecated, but it works for now for our examples, and we'll build up as we go. So, what are the things that we want to synchronize on the web, on our networking? Well, we definitely want to synchronize our position, right? That's awesome. We definitely want to do that. So let's go ahead and do that, and we're going to set this as, these 2 are fine for now. This is just, if it gets out of sync, it'll teleport us to catch up. Then we're going to say estimated speed is fine, disabled is fine. So this is all fine. We don't need to change any of that. We definitely want to synchronize our rotation, right? We want to rotate. We want to be able to see us rotating. But we don't actually want to synchronize the scale. We don't really care about the scale because if you think about it, our character should not really change scale during the game. Now, this might be different if you're making a game where, say, like Mario, he has those power-ups in some of the modern games where he grows to 8 times his size or something like that. Well, then, yeah, you would want to synchronize the scale because otherwise I would take that power-up, say, grow 8 times my size, but you wouldn't see that. You would see my normal size character if I don't have this synchronized over the web, right? And then we don't want that for this because everybody's going to be human-sized all the time. Very cool. Okay, so those are the things we want. Now, let's go ahead and add these into here. So I'm going to say, hey, the things I want Photon to keep my focus on, what are the observed components? Let's put the animator in there, and let's put the transform view classic. Now, I mentioned there's a third one. Might have to be next episode. We'll see how long in the tooth this one's getting. But let's go ahead and save that for now. So I'm just going to hit Control S on my keyboard, save. Or if you're in your prefab, here you can check this box to say auto save. So anytime you make any changes, it'll be saved. So if I just click that and take a look, yep, everything's good. So I'm going to collapse up the Photon view for now and hit save. It's nice and compact. And let's go back. Okay, so we're back here with our scene, and let's just take a look and see what happens. So now I'm going to hit play. And again, it's going to go through the whole rigmarole here where it's loading. And let's watch our console here. We can see things happen. And you can see Matt has connected the Photon servers. He's connected to the master server. That's my character name. Loading the main menu, right? So all these messages are great because when things go wrong, you want to know what's happened here. Here we go. So Matt has joined the lobby, 1 player, but there's 0 rooms created yet, right? We haven't actually created a room until we click this button. So I'm going to click the button. There we go. Now it's going to say, let's see, load it up. There we go. And here's my character. And let's take a look here. It is pause. Let's unpause. There we go. I can run around. Now pause because I have an error here. Create room failed. Client is on game server. Must be master server for matchmaking and ready. Wait for callback. On joined lobby. On connected to master. Okay, so I will take a look at that. And you see here we are. We can run around. No problems. Everything is working good for me. And I'm on the server by myself at the moment, right? So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to do an actual build in order to see the two side by side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quickly. Let's go to our build settings. We see here the login, the loading screen, the lobby, and the game scene. So I'm going to do a build, and then I'll be right back with you with the recording, and we will see what happens with that, okay? So back in just a second. Okay, so we are back, and here is the built project running. So all I did here was I clicked build, I pointed it to a folder, and then I double-clicked the exe that comes up from that. I'm also going to click play here in the editor. It's going to be a little tricky because I need to get both going here. But if I click play on this one, while this other one loads, you can see I'm running around the room here, all by my lonesome. But my other player is coming up here. So we're going to take a look at what happens with both characters in the scene together, see if we get any problems, that kind of thing. All right, so I'm going to move him off screen for now. Come back over here and click play. There we go, I'm in the scene. And look, there's my person. And we've got some problems. We got some problems because when I'm running here, I'm running backwards in this scene. And you'll see that it's moving my character backwards there. But you can see both characters are here together. And we can see that I'm moving around, looking around and saying, hey, look, there's two things in the scene. Let's take a look at the scene. So there are 2 players. See, there we go. 2 cameras. That kind of thing. So we've got some problems that we're going to have to fix. And we're going to look at what's causing these issues and look at the fix for them probably in the next episode because it is getting a little bit long here. But I wanted to show you guys working our way through the issues. I want you guys to see the issues and then see how we solve them. So that way you guys learn a little bit better than just follow these steps and it works every time, right? Let's take a look over here at this guy. You'll see he's also kind of shaking. He's nervous. He's nervous because there's problems. There we go. And same thing over here. I'm now in this window here. And as I'm clicking backwards and forwards, you see the other character is running. It's not the character I'm controlling that is running. So we've got some issues here, and we will look at the solution for that next time. But you'll see some positive things are, as I'm moving, my IK is actually working nicely over the web. So when we look up and down, we actually see that happening. Now, I'll be honest, some of the code I have for the next episode to share with you guys, I was expecting that to not work, and we were going to have code to fix that issue, right? So we'll fix this issue next time. We'll put that code in anyway, which might also help with this issue a little bit, but it will make sure that's also nice and smooth. But it's nice to see that maybe there was a change. Photon has updated since the last episode I recorded. And yeah, it looks like that's working smoothly for once, which is really nice. Now I'm going to hit escape so I can move my mouse around, and I'm going to close this. And I'm going to close this here. There we go. Hit play rather. Stop that running. So let's take a look at our log. So you can see one of the things it was complaining about is that there are 2 audio listeners because there were 2 cameras in the scene. And there shouldn't be 2 cameras in this scene. There should only be 1 camera in the scene because it's going to not show the other person's thing. And I'm pretty sure we know how to fix that, and we'll go over that next time. I just wanted to get you guys familiar with some of the stuff we did today. We covered a lot of ground today. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you'll notice a couple things here I wanted to point out before we go. So here it says here, we have joined this room with 2 players. So this really long, weird number is just the random GUID. A GUID is a globally unique identifying number. GUID number. And so this is the GUID for that room with 2 players. So notice we did have 2 connections into our scene. So we got 2 players into the game scene. So we made great progress there, right? And it says here, Matt has joined the lobby with 2 players and 1 room created. So we created a room and we have 2 players in that room. Now you notice here it says registered photon view 2001 and registered photon view 1001. Well, this 1001 and 2001 are kind of like our GUIDs for each connection. 1001 being player 1, 2001 being player 2. So we've proven here we have 2 photon views that are actually being instantiated into that room, and there they are, okay? Now we've got an extension method here, beard mesh was not found. Okay, we can deal with that. No, that's no big deal. And then the 2 audio listeners were because what's happening right now is there's no code to say, with these 2 characters that are existing in the same game space, I don't care about seeing or controlling your camera and your character, right? I want to see and control my character and my camera. So right now it's trying to do both, and then we're getting these issues. So the code we'll have next time will fix these issues, but I wanted you guys to see the issue and understand what's happening so that as we get more and more complex with this, that you'll be able to see, oh, okay, there's a lot to consider here when we're combining multiple characters into the same game space. How do I determine when you pick up a health item that it goes to you and not to everybody? You know, that kind of stuff. So this is the very beginning of that. And I know it's a little slow, and I apologize to some people who are like, come on, let's go. But honestly, learning well is better than learning fast. Any day of the week, I believe that learn it well. Take your time and really understand what's happening. Even if it's step by step, you get there slowly, okay? So thank you very much for joining me this time. I appreciate you guys sticking with me. We have lots of code here that we did today. Let me take a look here. So we did a whole bunch of coding here. So a lot of this, don't be afraid to go back through it, pause the video. I'll go slowly through it here if you want to pause at this point. Pause the video and type it all out. I apologize that I don't type it out anymore. It's a little bit faster so I can explain. Keeps the video short here. You guys can always pause and take your time with it, okay? So I want to show you all the functions here, make sure you understood what they were. I wanted to explain what they were. There they all are. And then these are just some additional stuff. Plus, if you are following along with the videos, in the description will be a link to the Git repo. You can just update the repo and you'll get all of this as it is right here, okay? So you'll be able to see it there too. So thank you very much, guys, again for joining me. I really appreciate it. We're getting back into the videos again, and I appreciate you guys sticking with me. We're on that road to 10K subscribers. Really just can't thank you enough for all your support, all the love and the great comments and the support in the community. You guys have helped me build a fantastic community, and you should be really proud of yourselves. I really appreciate it. It's awesome. It's beyond words. So until next time, guys, I'm going to go and start working on the next stuff for you, get it going. We've got some 10K celebration stuff I'm still working on that's coming. And so until next time, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.